welcome to Simply Being. I'm here with Kristina Nikolaj. Please check her out because she's helped me so much. But anyway, she is a breathwork facilitator, a coach, and a healer. And one of my favorite things she stands for is generational healing. And that's something that really has ignited my passion in holistic medicine. And I also want to ask, what ignited yours, Chris?
All right. So basically what ignites, I think, every healer is their own pain and their experience with mental, emotional trauma or whatever the case may be. So for me, I believe that every soul like comes into your life for some type of reason. There are certain ones that come in, they're like soul contracts that come into your life to help you rise in some way, to help you heal, to help you grow. This is just my way of looking at it. And I was in a relationship that was super toxic. And looking back at it now, I see that guy as like a manifestation of like both of the attributes of my parents that triggered me a lot as a child. So he came into my life, was triggering all of these wounded parts of myself, and it just like came in like a tornado and led to debilitating anxiety and depression. All this shame and guilt and all these things were coming up for me, and I didn't know how to handle it. It was like I had all these emotions building up for so long, and I put a cap on it, really tight cap, and then all of a sudden it just popped open and all of them were spilling out, and that was my spiritual awakening. So when that anxiety and depression came into the picture, I was like, I'm doomed. This is the rest of my life. My life is going to be me stuck with anxiety. And it was like I was losing weight. I was underweight. I was not eating. I couldn't eat because there's a mind-body connection, right? Your gut is connected to your brain. And if you're dealing with anxiety that badly, you're going to throw up every time you eat. You're going to feel nauseous. And I was crying almost on a daily basis because I didn't know what to do. I felt so alone in that experience. So eventually I was like, there was a little soul voice. My inner voice was saying, this is going to be you for the rest of your life. Then the soul voice was like, no, honey, like it's time to rise, girl. It's time to heal. Like, this is not what you're meant to be doing. This is not how you're meant to live. Like, there's no way. So I was searching. I just kept searching. What am I dealing with? What is this? And I found all this stuff on anxiety. And then I ran into Gary Vee, a video of Gary Vee on Instagram. And then he led me to Impact Theory, which is a podcast that like changed my life. I would say one of the hardest things in the world to deal with is to feel alone, because we all crave connection. We are like human beings who thrive on connection. We need connection to survive. So without it, that can really bring you in a low place. So I think one of the most important things is finding someone you trust and opening up about what you're dealing with, and then seeking help. And if you can't afford the help, start with the way that I started, like podcasts, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos. These people almost become like your mentors that you've never met before, but it feels like you've met them before. You're like on this journey with them, listening to them every single day, and they're interviewing people who've been through really low places and overcome them. So you're like, it immediately tells your brain, they can do that, I can do that. Like, it's possible, right?
No, 100%. It like gives you that that example to look up to. Like, that's why even just making vision boards and that kind of thing is so important, because you can see like this is what I want it to be, and you can like kind of visualize yourself getting there. And that's the same with these people, is like you're like, okay, they're just normal people and they're saying that they were at their lowest, because a lot of times when you see people on the media, they don't talk about that stuff there. So a lot of times it feels like, oh, of course they're successful, like who knows, like their dad was rich or whatever. But it's like you don't realize that even if that was the case, they still had trauma and they still had to go through stuff. So you realize like everyone has their battles, and just like just like they made it through, you can as well. And even when you make it through, you're still, like you said, gonna have work to do. And listening to podcasts has made me realize that it's okay to have work to do still. I have a lot, and like it's sometimes it's hard to think about, because I'm like, wow, I've gone through so much. Like the amount of work I've had to do to get to this point has been a lot, but I have so much more. Like there's still things that I think and do that I'm like, this doesn't align with my higher self, and it's hard to admit it. But I feel like once you do, is that it marks that first step of like improvement. So
Oh yeah. And being gentle with yourself, like knowing that it's just take it one day at a time, one thing at a time. Don't like feel like it looks like a big mountain, like, oh my God, there's so much I have to heal, but like one thing at a time. We look at things as like a big mountain, but like try to break that up into like little hills, small hills.
Yeah. And then also going back to the basics, because like with holistic medicine, because I switched from, I was pre-med, literally took the MCAT, was going to go the regular medicine route. And then I had a change in heart because actually my ex was naturopathic doctor, or he was going to school while we were dating, and I was always so resistant to even like thinking of doing it. I just thought, oh, like I believe in what he's doing, so when I'm an MD, I'm going to practice like an ND, because like I didn't like what MDs were doing at the core really. So I knew deep down I wanted to practice like a holistic medicine doctor, but I just thought I needed that. Like I realized later it was my ego that needed like the MD next to me, but that took work. But I had so much work to do in terms of like even just telling my parents, because then they're like, did you copy him, like are you trying to impress him now after? I'm like, no, I literally just realized and finally let go of my ego, and I'm trying to apply for regular medicine, and I don't like the curriculum, so I'm finally like, screw it, so doing this other thing. But to them it was like more weak as opposed to actually like being strong, but now all that was to kind of talk about the fact that the reason that I was so drawn to holistic medicine is because it goes down to the basics, and like it kind of makes you realize that, I mean, that's one of the core principles, is that your body is capable of healing itself when you remove the obstacles that are stopping it from doing so. And that's exactly like definitely what you talk about a lot. And I want to go back all the way down to the basic of breathing and like really have you talk about that, because I even messaged you this morning of like, oh my God, can I ever get better? Because I have been a mouth breather. I've been a mouth breather for as long as I can remember, and I'm realizing how much that's really impacted like just my confidence, my like just my ability to take like a lot of air in and like not feel like I'm congested all the time and all that stuff. So I just want you to talk about it as briefly or as deeply as you want, just because I don't think anyone realizes how important it is, and we focus so much on like the outer appearance of our bodies that we don't realize like the most important thing is it does for us. Breathing, we don't even think about more than we think about like what our eyelashes look like it's crazy.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we don't think about breathing because it's an automatic thing in our bodies, right? It's something that just happens. You don't have to think about it. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that we have the gift, we've been given the gift to be able to also control this automatic system in our bodies, right? And there's a reason for that. So mouth breathing, there's so much science around the mouth breathing thing, but I'm gonna just keep it simple. Mouth breathing leads to sickness. Let's just say that. So You can fix this, though. You can fix this.
I'm here. I'm a student.
So mouth breathing, it can lead to chest breathing. It can activate the sympathetic nervous system in your body, which is the stress response. So like we can control our stress response in our bodies, right? There's the sympathetic, that is the stress response. This is like revving us up for emergencies, getting us ready for emergencies. And then there's the parasympathetic. That is like our rest and digest, our relaxation response. So when you're breathing through your mouth, you're triggering this stress response. And then that leaves like shallow breathing from the chest, which also contributes to that stress response. Now, when you breathe through your nose, it allows you to actually get deeper breaths in, which seems like it doesn't make sense because the holes are smaller, right? Your mouth is bigger and you feel like, oh, the bigger the breath, you know, the more oxygen you get, which is not the case. When you're breathing through your nose, it goes like directly to your diaphragm, to your belly. It helps the diaphragm to work more properly, right? So when you're breathing in through the nose and through the belly, you are producing more carbon dioxide, more nitric oxide, which dilates the blood vessels, allowing the oxygen to travel everywhere that it needs to travel to optimize your body and the function of your brain, right?
Yeah.
So breathing through the nose when you're exercising, when you're sleeping, like habitually throughout the day will do amazing things for your health.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm trying to incorporate. I appreciate this. Like, you know, one-on-one, it feels like even though other people are gonna hear it, which is great. But, just because like it's like I said, the basics are what I'm realizing has screwed me over the most. Like even just like you know, I have certain hormones that are kind of out of balance right now. And like I'm reading about a protocol, and my professor even told me about it, where it's beans and you eat them because they're a lot of times the issues with our hormones come because of toxins in our body that are just seeping through. And if you eat beans, because they have soluble fiber, they allow the bile to travel through the digestive instead of going back to the liver with all that toxin like still attached to it. So literally eating like two spoonfuls of beans like every other meal or with every meal is supposed to do wonders for someone who's struggling with their hormones. And like this is something so tiny and little that I'm incorporating every now and then. And like it's, you know, I'm trying to incorporate it every now and then until I can do it like more, like you said, just like regularly so that I can actually see the difference. But what I'm realizing is like it's small little things that you can do that all add up, and then at the end you really feel like just a more whole and more like kind of listened to person, because you're like actually listening to your body as opposed to like, oh, I'm just doing whatever, I don't know, I feel okay today, I feel worse tomorrow. It's like actually pay attention to what you're doing habitually, you know, like that.
Exactly, that's what I was just going to say, is it's like your life lies in your habits. What are you doing every single day? Like when you wake up in the morning or how you're sleeping. This is why I choose to wear mouth tape when I'm sleeping, because a lot of times like we'll be sleeping, as soon as we fall asleep our mouth is closed, but then throughout the night you'll move and then you'll be like, you know, and that can lead to so many issues while you're sleeping. It can lead to sleep apnea, it can lead to snoring, which is actually depriving you of enough oxygen.
Yeah, now I'm realizing my sister the other day, you know, when I she visited actually, and she heard me sleep, and she's like, "You kind of snore like a little bit," and I was like, "What? I've never snored." And like the fact that just randomly I can start snoring just because I've been a mouth breather, like that doesn't feel good, and I just know that it's not doing good things to me. Plus, like I wanted to ask, where do I get this tape that you're mentioning? Because I would like to.
There's like several ones that you can use. So like some people get scared because they're like, oh, am I gonna suffocate like while I'm sleeping? You know, and no, it won't happen. But if you're scared and if you really want to be careful, like you can get just a piece of tape and put it in the middle of your mouth. You don't have to cover your whole mouth. I cover my whole mouth. I use Somnifix and it just covers my whole mouth. It doesn't move. Like sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and it'll end up on the ground. it's not because it's like I'm moving and it's like coming off. It's like subconsciously, if I really can't breathe through my nose for whatever reason it's plugged, I subconsciously do it and then just like take it off and throw it off. And it
Yeah.
feels so weird. I like want to tape myself one night and
Yeah.
watch myself do it. But there's different tapes that you can use. There's also a tape that you can put all around your mouth. Like this part is open. There's tape around it that kind of keeps it shut a little bit.
Oh, no.
But you can find this all on Amazon, and it's like growing. Somnifix is the one, I think that's how you pronounce it. Somnifix is the one that's probably the most popular.
Nice. Okay, yay. So I wanted to ask you another question. Because you said that this started with like your own anxiety and your own like, you know, self-healing journey, but when did you start to make it your career?
Okay. So in 2017 is when this all started. And I just started to really start researching everything. And then I started coming across videos that were saying, talking about spiritual awakenings. And I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening to me right now. There's a reason for this. There's a reason for this. And I came across someone talking about Viktor Frankl and his book, Man's Search for Meaning, basically talking about, you know, your suffering has meaning. And this is what I personally believe, you know, like I'm not all for saying like, this is happening for a reason to people when they're like in their shitty moments. Like, I don't want to say this is happening for a reason. This is happening for a reason and like throw that at them in their moment. But like, I really do believe that they're all suffering comes with opportunities for growth and healing. Right. So I learned that through all these expanders that I was following.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, like I see how these little things are helping me right now. So I want to use this to help other people. Because since I was like a teenager, I was like, I want to help people. I don't know how, but I want to help people. And I would stress out trying to figure out what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And then lo and behold, my rock bottom led me to my purpose.
What?
So I was like, okay, I'm going to start with nutrition first. So I started a health coaching course with IIN. And then from there, I started studying different courses on trauma and emotional healing. And then from there, I was in New York and I saw this breathwork for healing trauma. And I was like, I'm going to go. Like, I don't feel like I have any trauma anymore because I did so much work. Bullshit. So I went and I was like really curious. I want to see what this breathwork is about because I kept seeing it pop up. And then I went and I was laying there and we did this breathing. It's like a holotropic style breathing where you breathe from the belly, from the chest. This is all through the mouth, by the way. So like you can do mouth breathing when there's like a specific state you're trying to reach or you have a specific goal, but in your daily habitual breathing, nose, belly, slow. Those are like the top three most important things. Nose, belly, slow. Nose, belly, slow. Okay, so I went to this breathwork session and she played really loud music and we were just breathing continuously, belly, chest, out, like breathing over and over and over for like an hour. Maybe it was like a half hour. And then I'm like, all of a sudden I hear people like bawling. Like people were just having emotional releases, like screaming. People are screaming. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I was, for some reason, there was my ego holding myself back from crying. And I just was like, fuck it. And I just let myself cry. Cause like hearing that pain, like triggered something in me. And I just like started crying. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember having a vision. I'll remember this for the rest of my life. This vision of me helping the women in my family. I don't know why specifically the women, but I just imagined me being the facilitator and the women in my family being laying down the same way I was and helping them heal. And from that moment forward, I did not start breathwork right after that, by the way. I just knew in that moment, this is my modality. This is my thing.
Yes.
And so after that, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And then not even, I think it was like 6 months later is when I started to really look into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then went through like a course. And then ever since then, like I tried it on one friend, and the release that they had was like, whoa, like so deep. I was like, oh, this is powerful. I don't know what this is, but this is powerful. So after that, I started doing it on my friends and like family members, and they were all having these releases and emotional, just letting go, emotionally, not dumping, but just letting go of what was trapped in there. And it's unreal. So ever since then, I've just been dabbling in all these different experts in breath work and learning all the different areas of breath work, like the biomechanical side of it, the biochemical side of it, and then the psychophysiological side of it. So the breath is way more powerful than people realize.
Yeah.
Like way, way more powerful than people realize.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same as like, people who don't like, they'll be like, I'm so sick, this and that. And you'll be like, how much water do you drink? And it'll be like 1 cup a day. And they don't realize like, dude, your body is mostly water. Of course, water is important. Well, the same thing with breathing. Like, it's the one thing we do all the time. How can it not be important? Like, whether we're doing it right or wrong, But it's so hard to sometimes focus on those simple things because our mind is so focused on other things. I have 2 comments. So for that, I just want to share like when I went to my first, and I haven't actually never gone back because it was in Illinois, and then I haven't been able to find anyone here, so we might have to do something on Zoom. But that being said, my breathwork experience was incredible. It was like I literally had to tell the facilitator like 3-4 times, can you please come, because I think I'm stuck like this, because my hands were literally like this and I could not move. I was like this, like shaking very, very just like for the whole time. I don't know how to even describe it, but uncontrollably is what I was trying to say. But she literally kept saying, just keep going, keep going. I'm like, okay. So I did it, and at the end, her advice to me and just kind of like understanding of what was happening to me was that I was trying to hold on to too many things at once, and that's why my hands were literally clenched, because like it literally is so many areas of my life I was focused on and not being able to let go. And it's interesting because after that I did let go of some things and it did help a lot, but still I'm curious to see what happens at my next session to kind of like compare and also kind of feel out what I'm understanding of it, because in the first one I didn't know what to really make of it, so now it's going to be cool to kind of see that difference. But then also when you mentioned your family, it really like hit me when you said the women in your family, because that's something that really motivates me to keep going. And it's funny because a lot of the women in my family are those who are worried about me, because they're like, you switched careers, this and that, like I'm worried that you're doing this. But they don't realize like one of the biggest reasons I choose holistic medicine is because I do see it as like a way to help not only the world, but like generational trauma that has happened to us throughout time and that kind of thing. Because I feel like with allopathic, it's really taboo to even think about this stuff, because it's like, oh, what is this, So I wanted to ask you, like, ever since, have you been able to get through to your family and like have them really, understand what you're doing, or has that been difficult? Because I know you're one of the first Albanians I know that are doing, something in the holistic field.
At first, they were kind of like, what are you doing? I don't get what you're doing. But then over time, like I started getting messages from family members like, hey, how do I deal with this? Or how do I heal this? Or like, and some family members being like, my dad did your breath work the other day and it really helped him. And I'm like, what? Like, that's so crazy. And then like some of them will make jokes about breathing with me and stuff like that and calling me a hippie, like whatever. I totally like,
Accepted.
what's the word? Embrace that. But I think me sharing my story and like where I was mentally really inspires people, because I'm like a living example of being in the lowest place of my life mentally and then getting out of that, like not on my own, but like kind of on my own. You know, like I really pushed
Oh,
and did everything I could to get out of that, but with support, which is really important to have. But they've opened up, but it's really hard. Like they're not like, my dad's a mouth breather and it drives me insane. Because I try to tell him like, but he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't think it's true. He's like, that's stupid, you know? So he's not getting through to him like whatsoever. But I've learned to just live by example. And if they follow, amazing. If they don't, it sucks. But like, I'm not going to force them to
yeah.
by the way, me saying him being a mouth breather annoys me is because I care, and
Yeah,
like
of course.
I don't want you to think I'm like fucking mouth breathers, you know, like
You're good. I've accepted that in myself, and now like I tell my friends to be like, "Okay, please notice when I'm mouth breathing, like tell me," just because
beautiful.
I cannot. I'm realizing, like I said, it's hard to admit the things that are like the worst. Like mouth breathing, I thought, oh my God, I could never get over it. Like I just kind of stopped thinking about it being bad. And then now, like I've been paying more attention to your stuff, because sometimes when something triggers you, you'll be like, oh yeah, breathing, okay, and then skip through it. But now I like actually listen and like pay attention to what you say, because I'm like, I need to change this. But no, for real, like I'm really glad that you shared the story about your dad, because for me it's more of like, with the mental emotional stuff, like with my parents, I'm realizing with the living by example that like I need to show them how to react to things, how to be, because for
Yeah.
example, when they do something that triggers me, my initial thing is like, what the heck, why would you, but it's like, whoa, they always say like, you think you're awake, go hang out with your family for a week and see if
Oh
you're really
girl.
awake. And I'm realizing like, hey, okay, so I don't like the way my dad reacts when I do something like not even that bad. He'll be like, oh, why'd you do this? And instead of being like, come on, dad, like blah blah blah, it's fine. Reacting in a very chill way, I'm right away reacting in the same of like, why would you even ask? Like, why do you care? Or whatever. And then that's what really triggers things even more. So instead of expecting them to be the first people to change and, whatever in the reaction, why don't I, show them? So I really appreciate you said that, because it kind of made me think of like, it kind of reassured me of like what I've been telling myself lately of like, I can't really expect them to change because I'm telling them why it's important to care about how you talk to people and blah blah blah. Like they will be like, okay, cool, and then still react the same. But when they see like, wow, Fjorda didn't yell this time, then they'll be like, I won't either, So
Yeah.
really, really great point there. But I think my vision for the future with our community is really like opening up conversation, because like you said, we don't talk about this stuff in our community at all. And like my vision is that, instead of just having parties and stuff we dance at, like we'll have, breathwork circles and like community
Oh girl, yeah.
festivals and that kind of thing. I'm really manifesting it for us right now, because I think that's the biggest thing that needs to change. Because traditions, ideas, all that stuff, yes, it will change at one point, but I don't think it can just change by like telling people don't judge and then they don't judge. No, you have to start by, your grandma's judging, okay, ask her, why do you judge that lady? Like, because then they won't like randomly, my grandma for example won't start judging someone like in the community or whatever, but she'll see someone and be like, oh my God, poor thing, she did this, whatever. And I'm like, instead of yelling at her and be like, don't judge people, I'm like, hey grandma, like wouldn't you have felt better if like when you were younger and like you felt like you had to be a certain way, wouldn't you have felt good if like your mom told you, hey, be how you want, don't worry, like blah blah. And that's what gets her to be like, oh my God, you're right. Like then you get her to be like, let me not judge that random lady for like whatever she's doing. Because I feel like what we're trying to do a lot of times is like just kind of tell people like, don't do this, don't do that, but in reality it just comes from opening conversation, and that's only going to happen if people are more comfortable talking about feelings.
Mhm.
You're really, I don't know, you're triggering a lot of like really good thoughts in me, so I appreciate it.
No, I love what you just said. I think that's so beautiful, seriously, because
Yeah.
that whole judgment thing, it gives people anxiety to just be themselves. Like
Yeah.
I was that way. Even like the emphasis on looks in our culture
Mm-hmm.
growing up, that affected me so much.
Right.
And that was part of my, like, what led to that debilitating anxiety, because my self-talk was so bad. My relationship with myself, so bad. I was so critical of myself physically, like my personality, all of that didn't feel like it fit into what the Albanian society wanted me to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be this beautiful woman who's going to get married and have kids and marry an Albanian guy who's from this town, not this town, not this religion, not this, not this, not this. He has to be this. I'm like, so this is my window of how many men I have to choose from, right? And also being told that your worth is based off of whether a man wants you or not, or like if you could be a beautiful wife, a good wife. And I get it, that's what they were taught, so I'm not mad at that generation for,
No,
you
yeah.
know, like
Mm-hmm.
teaching us that. But I can see how it can negatively affect you depending on your upbringing or like what you were told growing up.
100%.
So I don't know where I was going with this, but
No,
oh
just
yeah, okay. So
judgment.
the judgment that you put on yourself because you're afraid of not being what your culture tells you that you should be.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to a lot of anxiety for me and a shitty relationship with myself. And this whole, like, that anxiety and depression that I went through led me to loving myself more than I've ever loved myself, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you count when I was born. I don't know how much I loved myself when I was born, but
Amazing.
but oh man, it really leads you to digging deep within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
finding out, like, peeling back all these layers of kind of bullshit that you were taught about yourself or about life or who you should be and what you are and what you're not, and then actually figuring out the truth about that,
Yeah.
like connecting with your soul and figuring out why you're here, who you're meant to be, how amazing you fucking are, despite what society or your culture is telling you you should be.
100%. And like as a result, when you accept yourself and love yourself, you're not going to want to judge others, because like you said, that judgment of others really does stem from yourself. Of like, if you see someone else doing something that's kind of crazy in yourself, you're like, oh my God, I could never imagine myself doing that. So you don't, so you're like, wow, how could she do it? But if maybe you didn't do exactly what she did, but if you did something that your family kind of didn't support, or your family didn't like think it was all that, when someone else does it, you don't want to judge them. You're like, go you, like, I knew what it was like I support you. And that's what people, I think, leading back to leading by example, I think that's why people have stopped being rude to me about what I'm doing and stuff, is because they're seeing that I'm becoming a nicer person, all these things, because I'm no longer restricting myself. And that's the same thing of like with beauty, is like, I feel like growing up, I was like, oh, like my grandma, oh, you're the best, you're the prettiest, whatever. And then like I moved to the US when I was 8, and there's so many cute girls, like they're literally 8-year-old, like blondes, like Cinderella looking princesses. And in my head, I'm like, okay, so if I was the best over there, like I can't be the best here, because now there's this completely different look that I can't ever have. So like, is this the best? Because this is like what people like here, And right away, dude, like the comparison, still, I think that's part of the reason I said that I have so much work to do, is because I still struggle with that. Like, I'm fully admitting that, like, still to me, like in the back of my head, it's always like a comparison game. And it's like, I don't want it to be that way. And I know that there's gonna come a time when I don't feel this like burden on me with this stuff, but we live and we learn, and as we go on, we let go of things. But really, I do still see that that's something I struggle with. And it's like, I sometimes, even when it's wrong, it's really hard to really stop. So
Of course, that's like shadow parts of yourself, but those parts of yourself that show up, need our love and attention the most. And a lot of times we shun those parts of ourselves because we're not proud of them, right?
Yeah.
It's not cute to be jealous or to compare yourself instead of celebrating someone else, but it's not what you want to be. It's not, I know, because I used to compare myself all the time. That was like my home was comparisonitis, like so bad. And I only just recently got to this point where it barely happens. And it's like, it's so common for a women, especially. I don't know from a man's perspective, but for women, it's such a common issue. But once you like really start falling in love with yourself and really accepting that shadow part of yourself and giving it love, giving it compassion rather than pushing it away. And because it's like, this is what I try to say to my clients, my one-on-one clients, is like, your shadow is like your inner child coming up, right? And if you're like, no, go away, like, I don't want you here, it's like you're doing that to your inner child that's wounded. And so you're just wounding that inner child even more. So that inner child that's showing up that's wounded wants your love. What is going to heal it? Love, compassion. And you're like, I see you. Like, I see why you're here. I know that there's so many things that led you to comparing like this and this and this and that. And having that conversation with yourself that's like really loving can change you immensely, can change that experience immensely. So that's why shadow work is so huge for me too.
That's another thing I really need to be doing more. I even have like my sister, shout out to her. She's only 21, but she's done a lot of work on herself too. And she thinks also that I need to do shadow work because she also thinks I need to give love to my shadow self. So she bought me all the incense and stuff like that. And she's like, you need to do this, these meditations. Yeah, she's so sweet. But no, for real. And I mentioned that because I want anyone who has like a family member who they think like would benefit from something, like, don't be afraid to say it, because I feel like it sticks. Even though I haven't lit up the incense yet, it's been in my mind, and like you saying it now is like an extra thing that reminds me. So it's about that constant like reminder and understanding and like growth and awareness that's constantly happening, and not closing yourself off. I feel like that's most important. But
also a habit, like, how do you respond to that part of yourself every single time it pops up? And then you can rewire that in your brain by repetition of a new response. Also, read The Judgment Detox. I don't know if you've read it.
The Judgment Detox
It was life-changing for me, so read that.
Hi. Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation, just because like I said, the open conversation in our community is so important, because like if there's more of us too doing it, like more people will understand that, like, hey, like maybe we should listen to this podcast, or maybe we should listen to what this person's saying, because it's like actually like it's not just this one like outsider. And that's, I think, the problem with our culture too, is like, because of the fear that all of us hold, like even the younger generation, because of that generational trauma, is like, and that fear of like coming out and being the one that kind of like tries to change it all. I feel like that's what's keeping more people stuck, because like the people who are doing something to change it are kind of still seeming as like the different hippie blah blah blahs. So I think the more there is.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Here's the thing, like, if we want our community as a whole to heal, we have to focus on ourselves. Like, we don't have to like be like, oh, I have the burden of everybody's healing on me. It's just like, just focus on yourself, because as you heal yourself, you heal the generations previous and the generations after you. Like, with my clients who are moms, when I see them healing themselves, they used to really react to stress like, oh my God, and like flip out and yell and whatever. And their kids started picking up on that. Then when they tell me that I saw my kid spill something this time, and they reacted like really chill. And whereas before they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, like, that is how you heal. You heal yourself, and then your kids will watch that, and you will respond to your kids differently, and you'll respond to the people you love differently, and then they'll pick up on that. So it's just you're changing your own vibration. Healing yourself is generational healing, right? Healing yourself is healing the world around you.
It is, because you have to think about like certain trauma, certain things that you've gone through that are from the past that make you kind of empathize with that, and like that's kind of how you're healing the past self and like the past people before you, because then you stop having like, you know, anger towards that. It's just all such a cycle, and then, you know, you move forward with that positive. It's crazy. It's all such a cycle, and I think that's the hardest part sometimes the older we get, because we think we've like, for lack of a better term, but like we think we've fucked up so hard that we like can't get out of it, so then we keep messing up more.
Yeah. And if you think about it, even on a scientific level, epigenetics,
Oh yeah.
you picking up stuff from your parents, like it's not in necessarily in your DNA, but it's the way that your DNA expresses itself. If your parents dealt with trauma, you're picking it up. It's in your body.
Yeah.
You're not just picking it up from watching them and from how they're treating you or talking to you. You have it in your body.
Yeah.
So that's why I think breath work is one of the most powerful. It's not the only way, but it's one of the most powerful ways to feel, release, like let go of what you're holding on to in your body. Because so much of the stress and anxiety that we're experiencing is not just up here, it's in our bodies.
100%. And it's like, I think what I really love about breath work as a modality is like your patients can feel a release, right? Sorry, I call them patients because like that's what we're trained now. But yeah, your clients are, you know, releasing right away. Like they're seeing that happen in your office, you know, like, yeah. And instead of like a lot of with our with naturopathic medicine, you know, our visits are like an hour each, and we talk about like every little like detail of their habits, and then we help them kind of like change that. But it's hard to get them to realize that something's happening in that moment, and with breath work they're seeing it. So I think that's really amazing and really awesome that, you know, you're a part of that. And funny thing about epigenetics, one little comment I want to make is like when I was pre-med, you know, I was researching to, you know, get as much experience in the lab as I could before medical school. And the one, I was not a lab person, so I did it, you know, the bare minimum I had to. But the funny thing is I did it in the epigenetic lab, and it was about kids who have gone through trauma with like alcoholic parents, but it also had to do with like different things that like depression that their parents had gone through, trauma, whatever, and then how that manifested into like the cells of like the kids. So for me though, obviously, you know, I had to kind of think about it in my own way, and my parents weren't necessarily alcoholics, but during my birth was literally like my mom was supposed to give birth to me in Iran, but then there was a war, like a civil war there, so she had to go and give birth to me in Macedonia where my dad was from. But there was literal shooting at their like the bus that they were taking, like while they were leaving the country. And so imagine the kind of stress my mom was feeling. And you know, obviously I don't want to downplay all the stress that the other kids in my brother and sister have experienced, but like it's a thing in my family that I'm the one who like always takes on stress more, always is like depressed for other people, like empathizes. I'm the oldest, so like that has to do with it, but also the fact that like my birth, my mom says, was the most traumatic out of all of them for her. First of all, like it was like so bad around, but then also imagine the hospital, what it was like when all this is happening around it, you know? So it's funny that like the one lab experience that I had was that, because that's another thing that really ignited this like passion for me to heal myself, because I'm like, wait, like this makes sense now. I'm not just like, you know, baby and like thinking, oh, I'm so sad, I went through a lot. It's like even just down to the cells, like there's proof that I am.
There's so much to look into in your history, like even the way you were born. Like if you were like, you have to look at gut health, generational trauma, your own trauma. You look into the way that you eat, your daily habits, the way you breathe. There's so much, and I know that can seem overwhelming, but like one thing at a time, as I said before. Like even if you were born out of C-section, that can affect your gut health.
I was just gonna say I was a C-section baby, even though both of my mom's other kids were vaginal, even though when you have C-section, if it was meant to be C-section, your other kids will most likely be C-section. Nope, her other ones were vaginal, just because of some idea, they're like, she's too big, they cut her open. And like, I definitely have gut issues because of that, I think. But like, my parents don't.
That, stress, and antibiotics. If you took antibiotics a lot when you were younger, I'm like
I
the
know.
poster child for horrible gut health growing up. Like,
I've had
also eating horribly, but the stress plays a huge part.
Yeah, no, this is it's just like, hopefully, do you feel like you get a lot of this is a little bit of off topic, but like, do you think that you reach a lot of people on TikTok? Because I know that you've done that, correct or no? Or is
Not
it
really.
Reels?
Like,
Or do you just do
like
Reels on Instagram?
just on Instagram. I've been thinking about TikTok, but I don't know. I'm like, I don't know how big I want to get. I'm trying to figure that out right now. I'm like, I just want to make an impact on people, like one-on-one. That's why I do the one-on-one coaching, like the program where we go really in depth with your history, your present life, and like what you want your future to be like. So that's what's most important to me. And I think I'm making an impact in a lot of people's lives from what people are telling me through Instagram, but I have to decide how big I want to get, because that's something you really have to commit to, you
For
know?
sure. But
I have TikTok, but I think it's really powerful. I think it's a really powerful platform in the fact that like your stuff will get out there. If people like it, it will spread, and it could open the doors for somebody. Just like my little video I saw of Gary Vee
yeah.
leading me to impact theory, leading me to everything it led me to.
Hmm.
It can be impactful for sure.
Wow. That's really, I mean, because, with my stuff, like even with my podcast, I've been like afraid to put it on TikTok and even just Facebook. Like, I'm so like, I don't know. But then you realize, like, no, because it's like people support, Dua Lipa or people that are Albanian famous doing things, even if they do things that are a little like crazy or whatever, they don't care because she's famous and the whole world knows her. But it's like, it's your support system, like, matters so much. Dua Lipa still says her most supporters are literally, or her biggest supporters are still from Kosovo. Like, even though she has millions of followers, still she says the most views are from Kosovo. So we should use our community as like, I mean, it's not technically our fault. It's like, it has to come from within of like, hey, if this person's trying to like grow or trying to like do something that's kind of different, like, let's support them instead of like, oh my God, they're such weirdos, blah, blah, blah. And then once you get famous, it's like, yay, oh my God, I love you.
It's
So
one, I think, like connecting yourself to your purpose and why you're doing it, your why. Think about your why more so than what people are going to think. Like when I first posted about anxiety, my anxiety, I had so much anxiety. Like I posted about my anxiety and I was like, oh my God, people are going to judge me. People are going to pity me. People are going to think I'm weak, this and this and that. All that stuff was popping up. And then I was like, just no, there's a reason you're doing, you could help even one person from this post. And then I got all this feedback of people who were like, whoa, like I'm dealing with this too, I didn't know you were dealing with it. And I was like, okay. So then I just started posting more. I started off as like a food blogger, like posting healthy foods and stuff, and then I was slowly transitioning, and I was like, maybe people won't like this emotional mental stuff. And then I kept going with that because that's what my heart wanted to do, my soul. And now that's what I talk about.
yeah, and
It
now
just evolved.
oh yeah, and I'm so grateful because I'm like, now when you're talking about things that you do and like you've talked with your clients, I'm like, wow, I need to like tell my mom about it and tell this, so it's like you're literally impacting people, but then also having them be so impacted that they want to share it with others. And like, as a result, like the more people you help, the better it is, in my opinion. Like the more you're able to just like share the love and like share that experience, because maybe not everything will resonate with everyone, but then one thing will resonate with each person. It's really nice. Yeah.
It's a ripple effect. Like these ripples create waves.
Mm-hmm.
You doing this small thing will send these ripples out, and then everybody, like it'll pass to this person, and this person will pass it to their sister, and their sister will pass it to their boyfriend, and da 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 da, and it just trickles out.
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
it's
yay.
amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you too long, and like I really have loved this conversation. I've learned so much, so I hope everyone who's listening, kind of got something out of it. And I appreciate your time and energy, and just even like it's hard when you know that someone has like you know a busy life to even like get yourself to want to reach out. So like getting that response really meant a lot to me, and it makes me really grateful that you want to be a part of my mission. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm really proud of you for what you're doing. Really, it's amazing. And you being your age and being Albanian, it's I love it. Spread the word, girl. And I love the fact that you're fully yourself. Like your posts, it almost feels like you don't give a fuck. Like, and I'm sure some part of you does, but you're still doing it.
Yes,
You know?
and you know what? Thank you so much. Like, I literally appreciate that more than anything in the world, because it really, like, I even noticed with my podcast, I've started to not really edit it much. Like, I mean, I never really did, but I made a point to like leave it raw, And if I even listened to it before, and I'm like, oh, what do I do? This and that. Like, oh, I said this. I judge myself, but then I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Like, I'm expecting others not to judge me, but I'm going to judge myself. So then I do it. And same with my posts. Sometimes I'm like, this is too much, but I'm like, wait, but I thought this and I did this. So why would I be embarrassed of it? So then I force myself to put it out, even though maybe one day, like I've thought about, okay, when I'm a doctor, like, do they need to see all this? It's like, no, but this is my journey. You guys need to see it now. And then maybe when I'm a doctor and I'm trying to, just talk about like what will help my patients, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I won't leave my post from like when I went to a party and thought like I had a great time with my friends, but that was part of my journey that led me to be a good doctor. So why not share that too, So really, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right, my love. Thank you so much for having me. I could have talked forever about this stuff.
I know. And if you ever like, I mean, I'm probably going to hit you back up for like certain other topics, because I just like I said, the more we're introduced to people who have done the work and who are continuously doing the work, that's like the most we heal. So I want, my viewers to be able to heal with each episode, one little step at a time. So even, introducing them to people like you, and then kind of like spreading that ripple effect, like you said, even if that's all I can do, like that's enough for me. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh,
all right. Bye, my love.
okay. Bye. I'll make sure not to mouth breathe today, at least.
Yeah, keep it. Put it like a little sticky note and say stop mouth breathing, or like even little reminders in your phone.
Okay.
Breathe through your nose. Breathe through your nose. Breathe through your nose, like throughout the day.
No, yes, I'm gonna do that. Yay! I'm excited to see this. Like, I'm not just acting excited. Like, I'm literally just like, the feelings I'll have when I'm no longer like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
See you. Bye.
Bye.